All right, welcome back in. We left off talking about the PTS tournament coming up on Saturday. All formats have a 1985 run environment with a DH. So very important. It does have the DH, and most of them are capped, of course, except for the perfect drafts. And I think maybe the open isn't capped. All right, let's get to it. You need help. You want some advice. Well, there's so many great people in the community that know this game extremely well, and they all have different ways to approach the game, and they all emphasize different parts of building a team. I want to introduce you to a member of the community that I've seen on other streamers, posting in the chat, seen in Discord a little bit, and you may have seen this individual around in the chats. You heard of the Reservoir Dogs, the movie The Reservoir Dogs? Well, I'd like to introduce you to the one, the only, from our community, Mr. Black. Mr. Black, how are you doing?
Good afternoon. How do you do?
Hey.
I would like to point out I am very impressed that the name Mr. Black comes from Reservoir Dogs. So very well.
Hey,
very well done.
Yes. And a Quentin Tarantino movie, Reservoir Dogs, one of his first, I believe, and it's quite the movie. I don't recommend you watch it with your kids in the room.
No,
It is quite the movie, and it made that song Joker's
Stuck in the Middle with You, I think.
Yes, Stuck in the Middle with You. So yeah, that crazy movie, and I just assumed that that's where you got your nickname from. Of course, as a coffee lover, there's also the Mr. Black coffee liqueur, and there's the Mr. Black cold brew coffee liqueur. So I took a gamble, and I thought, well, I'm guessing it's from Reservoir Dogs.
It was the right move. That is where it is from. Now,
Yes.
I'm not much of a coffee drinker, and coffee liqueur, but Black Label Johnny Walker Scotch, that works in a pinch.
All right. Yeah. And this is a product of Australia. I've never seen it before, but when I was looking up Mr. Black photos, that one came up. So tell the community a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, and when you got involved with OOTP.
Well, first of all, I will apologize for not being properly American dressed. His laptop is. Unfortunately, I am able to wear the hometown team shirt. Unfortunately, I have to watch the San Diego Padres. But they're there. It could be worse. Could be a lot worse. So my name is Tom. You can see it in my name from the game, Tom Cadillo. I manage the San Diego Reapers TBD. I first started playing out of the park baseball 2 cycles ago, 22 in mid-June. So I kind of missed the boat at the start of the cycle. Caught up well, except my first year in the game, it was bronze tournaments, league, nothing else. I genuinely didn't look at a card if it wasn't a bronze or if it wasn't a new good enough to play on my team card. It was only until the next season, last cycle, where I actually started playing tournaments, and he may even be in the chat. The person responsible for this is Charles from the Warbot TBD streams. He showed stats and data for Silver, which I had not played ever up until that point. But having all the names of the players on the screen, how good they did, really helped out when it came to building a roster. So pretty soon I was in Silver tournaments, and pretty soon I was playing almost every tournament format under the sun. These days, I'm still a free-to-play player. Don't even have PT Plus anymore. Hey, I live in San Diego. My landlord's going to squeeze me until there's nothing else. But I have developed a few odd skills that many people don't. I would call myself a modeler. When asked, I will say yes. However, don't listen to me with player evaluations. I'm probably a bottom 10% player evaluator. There are so many better player evaluators out there. Like Kidneys used to be around. Charles is still out. Many of the E6 guys. However, I like to think I have a competitive advantage. I read box scores. I'll put the box score.
I was going to ask you in terms of your modeling. What separates you from other modelers? What makes you different from other modelers? What you focus on?
So as a result, I mostly copy for what other people say, or just generally try to get the gist of what I'm saying. If you've listened to Charles, having high I is really good. But more other things I look at and test myself. I consider myself a pretty good slider man. I don't think I'm the best slider man in the game, but I do know what almost all of them do. And I have this most recently, the last couple months, I have been studying bullpen usage and bullpen deployment very hard. I've given it a real good look, and I think I've learned some pretty cool things you might be interested in.
Right, and that's why I invited you on, because I'm in the bronze as one of the PTCS I'm in, and I think we were both watching iRock yesterday and just kind of started chatting and thought, hey, I've seen you make comments in cap builds and things like that. I thought he'd be cool to have on the show and help all of us out in these cap tournaments. So we're going to build my bronze team for the PTCS a little bit later, but before that, Mr. Black has created some information for you guys, and we're going to start with the PowerPoint that you sent me here.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to leave it to you.
All right. Now, I don't know how sabermetrically inclined the audience is, but don't worry, this isn't too hard to understand. In baseball, there is a defensive spectrum based on how important it is that your position plays defense. On the far left is DH. You don't even get to play defense at all. Why do you need a glove? On the far right is shortstop and catcher. It's okay if you don't hit as a shortstop or a catcher, but you need to play defense. As Bill James once said, what a lot of people think of as pitching is actually defense. Now, this is in real life baseball. This is not OOTP, but as you go, you can see some of various things. For example, okay, now this is much more relevant to our purposes. This is for Perfect Team. I also want to point out that this is for Modern Era 2010. It is different in other eras. If in the future, if you want to look up eras to compare them to, remember that the modern era we place to is in 2010. So, on the far right, the most important defensive position in modern era is catcher. I'm sure you've all noticed how important Jeff Mathis is. He's not much of a bat at all. But that catcher ability is so good. It's so helpful, especially because in modern eras, strikeouts are so common. Up next is shortstop. Better the shortstop, the more better your BABIP's going to be. Defensive efficiency, which is the opposite of BABIP, how many balls you turn into outs. Followed closely by center field and second base. As you go further to the left, defense matters less and less. I'm sure many of you who play gold start that gold Chipper Jones at third base. He's got no glove at all, but that bat, really good. And then it goes all the way down to defense. Now, also understand that this is just for defense. It's great if you can do more than that. If your shortstop is both a great glove and a great hitter, sounds awesome. You should play that guy. But these are the bare minimums in regard to whether you need to play defense and you need to hit. Also, each player's position has some specific defensive ratings that are just more important than one another. First baseman, it's height. He'll be able to jump and spear a line drive. Also, IF error. He's still got to catch the ball at least 15 to 20 times a game. Errors are still uncommon, but he still needs to not commit them. Second base, the most important stat is double play. He's going to be the pivot in the double play more often because most hitters are righties. They will pull the ball to the left side of the infield, being the shortstop or the third baseman, who then throws the ball to the second baseman, and the second baseman's got to turn too. So infield double play is what he rules most, and then infield range. I want to warn you about something because this is wacky. This assumes that most of the batters are righties. Righties pull the ball to the left side of the infield. If you are going up against an entirely left-handed batting lineup, well, they're not going to pull the ball to the left side of the field. They're going to pull the ball to the right side of the field. Your second baseman's range is going to come up more often against left-handed hitters for that reason. It really isn't that much to worry about, but be aware of it. For third base, there isn't as much he can do with his range. If he jumps and gets a ball down, he still has to make a difficult throw to throw the runner out. The most important stat for a rating for a third baseman's defense is his infield arm. He's going to be rolling more than anything else. Finally, for shortstop, it's great if he has a high everything, but far and away, shortstop infield range is his most important defensive ability. So many balls get hit to him, and the sheer volume of how many of them he can stop and how many of them he lets get past him into left field are going to impact your results very much. For left field, it's the easiest outfield position to play. Range will get more outs than anything else. I mean, error is nice. Don't drop the ball. Arm isn't as important. You are closer to third base, and you do not need as much arm to throw. Right field is the same, except there's a little more emphasis on arm because he's further from third base, and he needs to make that throw. Center field, however, needs more of both of them. He is going to be responsible for catching many more fly balls than the other two fielders. And remember, if you don't catch a fly ball in the outfield, it's a double. Preventing doubles is really helpful. That's why outfield range for center field is going to be more important than anything else. Also, the ability to throw a runner out from center field is easier from right field. You're closer to third base. So your center fielder has a bigger chance to make outfield assists than your right fielder. Outfield assists are still rare, especially in modern era, but nothing is worse than getting thrown out at home. There's no better way to ruin a game than to turn a run into the third out and in the inning. Finally, for catcher ability, far and away, better than anything else. It's not even close. Catcher arm is only rolled for throwing out would-be base stealers. And unfortunately, in out-of-the-park baseball, stealing doesn't really work. Even the best base stealers will not successfully steal bases enough times to turn a profit. In fact, you should probably only steal if you are behind, if you are desperate. Even then, though, it's not a good idea. You're going uphill. It's like sacrifice bunting. You can do it. It might work out, but it probably won't. Whereas for catcher ability is literally everything else. Framing pitches, his infield fielding play, everything else is catcher ability. You don't really expect your catcher to do much as a fielder. I mean, maybe he'll turn the 1-2-3 double play. Okay, that's cool to see. But the ability to frame strikes and turn at-bats into strikeouts is extremely powerful in modern era, as modern era is the highest strikeout rate era. So catcher ability in a high strikeout era is really, really good. But what about other eras? Oh, okay. Sorry to say, yeah, the pitcher's hold runner rating is about as important, if not more important, than catcher arm rated for preventing base stealers. As a matter of fact, there's no way to look at this in the game, but I always thought the most important thing is the pitcher about to throw a curveball? That's when we steal, at least in real life baseball. Can't really do that in out of the park, so well, that's not really that important.
All right. Well, so there's some opening kind of tips there. This is the defensive spectrum. Okay, not talking offense or anything, just the defensive spectrum in Correct. OOTP in the modern era 2010. And I like how you said it's the era with the most strikeouts. So that's going to be key. The thing I would add or ask you, Mr. Black, is you also have to, ballparks, your construction of your ballpark must come into play as well, correct?
Yes. Now, in tournaments, that's not a thing. We all play in perfect park. With your ballpark construction league, absolutely. You've all seen those cheese teams, either all lefties or all righties, and they set up their ballpark to help their batters out and hurt everyone else. Be advised, with that cheese, when you were running cheese, that bit I said earlier about the second baseman getting more chances from left-handed hitters is a thing. So if you're playing righty cheese with righty pitchers and you are facing lefty hitters, your second baseman's IF range is more important than it would be otherwise.
All right. Okay. Right. So that for perfect team, when you're playing in the league or in the tournaments, everyone gets the same ballpark. It's all neutral. Correct. And now we're going to move to the differences with the different eras. And this is what I think is really important and going to help a lot of people out, including myself, when we look at this, the ranking here defensively in modern. And now we go to some other eras, including the one for PTCS, which is 1985.
Okay. Now look at the title at the top. This is not defensive spectrum. This is the cap spending spectrum for OOTP Perfect Team Tourneys. Because I'm sure you've all noticed, buying bats is expensive. The overall rating of hitters is high. There are plenty of players who are position players who don't have bats but have great gloves.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you one sec because we have a few people just kind of watching here. This is not just for bronze tournaments. This is all tournaments, correct?
Correct. This is for all tournaments, yes. Anyway, so when you are constructing your roster, you're not going to have enough points to purchase all you want, at least usually. Last PTCS, the cap numbers were so high, you had all the points to buy all you want. Not so much this time. So you're going to have to cut some corners. You're going to have to put some less than amazing bats out there. Which one's which? Where should we put our cheap batters and where should we pay for bats? And this is what's on the screen right now. If you need to cheap out and you don't have the points, put out a cheap catcher or a cheap shortstop in Modern Era. Jeff Mathis is great. You can play someone like Tommy Tevenow, or you can play Greg Gagne in shortstop. We even have a joke in OOTP Era. You have to have Cliff Pennington because he is the best shortstop and he's a 47 overall. You can't afford to pay for everything, and that's where you go. Because as a shortstop or a catcher, your defense will still contribute and still matter, but you cost less. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, I hope you're not cheaping out on DH. Your DH has to hit. There's no way around this. That guy needs to produce some runs. If you're playing a cheap DH, you're not playing as efficiently as you should be if you are playing a cheap shortstop. You see what I mean? Now here at the top list, I wanted to point out rating in Modern, and also the C's are in red. And the reason the C's are in red is because catcher ability scales with the strikeout rate of the era. Now, Modern Era is one of the highest strikeout rates in baseball. That's why I have it on the far right, because catcher ability in Modern Era is just better than catcher ability in other eras. We'll see later what exactly happens in 1985, but I can tell you that the K rate is a little lower. For that reason, the catcher's place on the cap spending spectrum is a little less important than the other fielders. He will not be able to produce as many strikeouts with his catcher ability, and more balls are going to be hit into play. So defense, or more importantly, cheapness, is better spent on, say, center field or second base than necessarily catcher. And just to point out the extremes, in dead ball, you ain't striking anybody out. You think you can? No, you're not. Luis Tiant, the admission card, he's very common in dead ball. He's got a struff of like 96 or something. 3.1 K per 9. That's really good in dead ball. It's not good for our purposes. Don't play for strikeouts in dead ball. So in dead ball, the catcher's the first baseman. I genuinely believe that my first baseman's infield error is more important than my catcher ability in dead ball.
Wow. Okay. So again, a great graphic here. So you're spending your cap points on your higher end guys here in 1985, this week's PTCS. You're putting your cap points into your DH, your first baseman, your third baseman, and you're cheaping out. You're spending that 40, the 45, the 50, whatever it may be, on your second base, center field, and shortstop.
Correct, because their gloves, along with my pitcher's PBABIP, are going to choke to death the other team's offense. And in a Modern Era setting where I can strike guys out, I don't have to have the gloves because I can strike you out. Remember what Nolan Ryan said? I never worried about base runners. I can strike guys out. Less so in 1985 and even more less so in dead ball. So I wanted to make sure to point that out, that the catcher's importance in caps is corresponding to the era, or specifically the strikeout rate of the era, because that's what catcher ability does, generate strikeouts.
Very useful. So, okay, so we're buying all these players with our cap money. Where do pitchers then fit in here in terms of spending on pitchers? One starter.
The most important thing is to buy pitchers that you think you're going to need. I can tell you right now, in Modern Era, I am going to make use of 9 pitchers. I will have 11 to 12 pitchers on my roster. 2 to 3 of them are going to be 40s who will never go in and never be given anything important in any circumstances, at least not on purpose. I can talk a little bit more about this later when I show you my full Era Scout. In 85, you still need to use relievers, just you need to use less. In other words, in Modern Era, there's no way around this. Even if you have 120 stamina, you'll be pitching on fumes after the 7th. If you hit the 120 pitch mark, I don't care how good your stamina is, you're going to be significantly weaker than you normally would be. Are you going to be weak enough to use a reliever? Well, I don't know. It depends how good the reliever is. In a cap situation, you're going to need to think about that on whether or not how much my relievers are going to be used and how much I should spend on them. It's a little complicated. We can go into a little more detail when we actually make the team.
Yep.
But in Modern Era, I need 4 relievers to back them up. In 1985, I'm probably going to go with 2 relievers to back them up.
Wow.
One thing I'll point out now, and I'll point out again, when you are purchasing relievers, buy them in pairs. The reason why is because each pitcher has 2 fitness ratings: his starting pitching fitness percent and his relief pitcher pitching percent. You've probably seen those on the stamina pages. Starting pitchers percent is how long it's been since you threw a pitch. If a reliever comes in, gets 1 out for 5 pitches, and leaves the game, he's going to have a starting pitching percent of about 4 and a relief pitching percent of about 94. He wasn't tired. He didn't really do much work, but he just threw a pitch. So his starting pitcher fitness percent is going to go down. The most important thing I've noticed is that there is diminishing returns on reliever rest. The most amount of reliever rest you are going to get is on the first rest day. Furthermore, the amount of fitness you lose when you pitch is exponentially cumulative if you pitch multiple days in a row. A pitcher in Modern Era who pitches 5 pitches 2 days in a row will lose more relief fitness than a pitcher who pitched 30 pitches in 1 day. So I recommend buy them in pairs. Make sure you have a pitch count to get as much as you think you need out of them. But while one of them is resting, the other one is pitching. This isn't going to go smooth. It's not going to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to need to use both. On the other hand, the opposite is true. If your deep offense win the game for you, you can send one of the 40s in and rest both pitchers. Oddly enough, I thought this was hilarious. The best thing you can do to have a good bullpen is to have a good offense. A steady diet of easy, low leverage innings makes everyone look good.
Okay. And feel free, Chad, if you have any questions. We got one of the, the best cap tournament, perfect team tournament minds here. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I guess just one I have. Does this change at all, Mr. Black, whether it's a best of 5, best of 7? Does that come into play at all, the length of the tournament? 16 teams, 32 teams?
It is unacceptable to play a tournament of any format, cap or open, that cannot survive playing multiple max length series in a row. There's nothing you can do about it if you have to play a full 7 or a full 5, and that is a hindrance in the next series if you can't cope with that. So you do need to know how much you can abuse your pitchers and how much you can get away with. However, when we talk a little bit about bullpens later, there was a new thing that was added just this year that makes this so much easier. If you're not using the mop-up roll, you should.
Okay, well, a little teaser there for you about the mop-up. Okay, so let's transition over. Do you want me to show, first of all, the that other spreadsheet chart?
Sure, we can go to the error settings, sure.
Okay, or do you want me to go right into building the team?
Well, no, let's see the error ratings first, because it is going to affect our thinking a little bit. We do need to think about what we need to bring, what we don't need to bring, and the relationship it has with Modern Era.
Excellent. Okay, well, just so much, learning so much already. And remember that Charles shared, the baseball reference site where you can go and you can look at the statistics for real life baseball during these different time periods. So I'll just post that here, and you can click on a couple. Remember Modern Era 2010. So we can click on that. And then if we want to compare it to 1985, and then we Click that, and it's going to bring up those 2 years, and you can look at, triples, doubles, home runs, RBI, strikeouts in a very quick visual format.
Mm-hmm. There's a little more you can do from this, but the baseball reference method you just showed is 90% of the battle. There's not really much more you can glean by doing some of the weird stuff I do. I did it, and I'll show you what it is, but this is plenty looking at the batting average and the pitching averages, and you can get a pretty good picture of how the game changes depending on the year. Make sure, though, that you're checking the year and not necessarily the era. Some of the years are outliers. Some of them are a little wacky. They'll be a little more or less than what you'd expect from the era. That's okay. Just make sure you pick the year. Don't just generalize in sense of eras.
Good point. Mr. Audit has a question here. How do players eligible to learn but not trained work in tournaments? Any idea about that?
Okay. Every player has their infield ratings and their outfield ratings, and they're never going to change. They are what they are. They also have the training ratings. Either A, they're fully trained, B, they're partially trained, or C, they're not trained. Finally, there is a D, they're not even eligible. They can't play that position even if you try. If a player is fully trained, he'll play exactly what you see. I see Jason Giambi here on the list. He is first base trained for 55. Unfortunately, I can't see his height, but oh, yikes, 27 infield error. That's not that big of a deal in modern. Don't play this guy in dead ball. That's not going to go well.
Okay.
But he's trained at first base, so you can play him at first base. I don't know if he has any other positional eligibility.
Yeah, we can't see everything from the card here, but just thought I'd throw that up quickly. Okay, so let's go to the spreadsheet you sent me, and this again. I mean, feel free.
Well, I still got to finish answering the question.
Oh, okay.
So if you're partially trained, and it will say in his card with a fraction like 32/55, he is fully trained in tournaments. You are welcome to go ahead and throw him in. You'll find a lot of those really good defensive outfielders who are trained at all three positions. Center field, he's not going to be as good at because center field is just more demanding than the other positions. But you can play him at any of the outfield spots in a tournament because he's partially trained there. Now, if he's got the potential to train there, but does not have a rating of at least 1, he's a gym unknown. You might as well put yourself out there. He still might make the catch. You can still catch a fly ball. As a catcher, pass balls aplenty. And then finally, if he's ineligible for a position, that means you can't even select to put him there. And he'll only be put there if you've shenanigans, like you've benched everybody else, or he's the only guy on the roster, or some sort of emergency happens where he's going to go in. But you can't even put him in on purpose, is my point.
Okay. And again, I've just found a card here we'll quickly throw up just to kind of illustrate that. So we've got Lonnie Smith here, who, left field, but also qualified to learn center field, but
correct,
won't do anything in a tournament.
He's going to play like an okay left fielder, okay range. He's not going to drop the ball with 97 error and kind of a below average arm, but that's okay. He's a left fielder. You can select to play him in center field. However, he's going to cover a lot less. That range isn't going to be anywhere as good as 69. That error is going to be nowhere good as 97, and his arm is going to be nowhere good as 42.
Okay. Whereas a player like this one here, eligible for 5 different positions and fully trained at all of them.
Correct. So this guy can play all of those positions, and he gets the full value from his defensive ratings in all of those positions. Notice he is not trained in center field, so he doesn't get his ratings if he's playing in center field. But he does get his ratings when he's playing in all the positions he has partial or full training for.
So where would you play? Where is his best position? Because he's like average everywhere, and don't get fooled by the position rating number, right? Look at the ratings defensively.
Mm-hmm. You got to look at his bat first. It's important. Unfortunately, 64 at second base. That's tough because he's not that great of a bat. He's not that great of a fielder. If he was one or the other, I can find much more use out of him. Now, he's the best at first base, but there are so many better bats at first base. Like, you can play him at second base, but say Ryan Schimpf, I think, is a better batter at second base. Okay. He, however, he's a great utility man. And I would look to play him in a bronze floor tournament. He's only going to cost me a point. And he's going to cover more positions than, say, Dal Maxville or something like that.
Excellent. And then Lance Berkman, same thing, the silver one, qualified for center field, can play first, left, or right in a tournament, but probably you can just DH or first base this guy.
This guy does look like a DH to me. I think you can play him in left field or first base in an emergency. Ooh, 37 error. But then again, I've done worse than 37 errors, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. You can't sweat first base error too much in Modern or in 1985. At least look at it in dead ball.
And before we get on to your chart here, just a quick update. This is the tournament going on right now. I'm up 2-1 on the Michigan Wolves. So Wolfman, if you're gonna take the bounty, you got to win 2 in a row against me. And no sweeps. All the series are currently still going on. Okay, let's bring up that spreadsheet here, or the chart. Over here, and
that's not my spreadsheet. That's Jason Giambi. There we go. Okay. So I do this for every PTCS. I'm not going to do this for every year. That's way too much work. But if you tell me that something important is going to happen in a particular year, I can do this. So there are several categories here. On the first far left is just what each particular characteristic of the era is, and I've written it down. In the first column, you see MLB 20 and 10. All that stuff is directly from Baseball Reference. If it says NA, I just wasn't able to find it easily on Baseball Reference. Black's opinion, that is what I would say is in a general sense, if that is a high, a medium, or a low number. And all of those things will affect how much you care about that particular thing. The third category the third column is 1985. Those are the different numbers. Then my opinion on it next. But after that, though, are the ratios. So for example, in hits, there's almost an equal amount of hits in 2010 than there is 1985. There is significantly more doubles, 13% more doubles in 2010 than 1985. And you can go down the list to there. Now, Calc 2010 and Calc 1985, the next two columns, I just do it a little differently. Specifically, I use the auto calc function in the base game. I start a new save. I save it immediately because I don't want to change the players or anything else about it. I go into the game, settings, game settings, stats, and AI, and there's a little section on the side where it lets you pick what year you would like to play in. I do it for 2010. Make sure you do it several times. And I also do it for 1985. Click the auto calc button, and it will give you little numbers on how often it is. And from here, I have those numbers and the ratios, how different they are. So notice how the double statistics are the same for both the MLB off of Baseball Reference and the calc numbers off of OOTP. The K rates, however, are a little different. MLB, it's 76%, 3/4 as many strikeouts. With the calculator, it's 60%, 3 out of 60% as many strikeouts. Which one's right? I don't know. There's no real way to say to get a very clear picture about this. But still, though, it's noteworthy to see the differences between them. There's also a little bit lower on the edge of the slide, but we don't need to worry about it now. We'll get to it in a moment. So let's go down the thing here. At the very top, go ahead and scroll to the top for me. We're going to look at my opinion on how it is. If you don't know your way around Modern Era, you're going to need to know your way around Modern Era to play out of the park baseball. There's no way around it. Hits in Modern Era are kind of average, 876. There are a lot of doubles, kind of an average amount of triples. Maybe it's a little on the low side. Lots of homers. There's just as many homers here as there are in the HR era. Lots of walks. Lots of strikeouts. You've all heard the phrase, 3 true outcomes baseball, and it's because it's true. Many players in MLB are specifically trying to either hit a home run, draw a walk, or strike out. The next two rows are kind of tricky. First is the BABIP percent, which is right off of Baseball Reference. It's high, shade south of 300 in 2010. That's high. Lower than that is the BABIP volume. And in Modern Era, it's low. The reason for this is that there's so many strikeouts. With so many strikeouts, there are less balls in play. Less balls in play means less chances for your gloves to actually do anything. So in a high strikeout era, I mentioned this earlier about the catcher issue, your other gloves just aren't going to do as much. However, if there are fewer strikeouts, your gloves do more work, which is why I put in that little continuum how the catcher moves down based on how many strikeouts are used. Would encompass all the players, and perhaps you're bringing predominantly certain types of players. The ratios in MLB are for Major League Baseball, so that's true. For these ratios, they encompass all players. Lots of weirdness can happen with weird decks. I mentioned earlier about all lefty hitters hit towards the second baseman more than they hit towards the shortstop. However, these ratios assume that it's a normal 65-35 righty-lefty setup. That's not the case in tournaments. Some of them are really weird. In gold, you're going to face left-handers all the time, at least 80%. So you're going to have to realize what not only what the base settings are, but what the actual environment is based on the opinions of OOTP perfect team players. Who's the more popular players and who are you going to see more often? In gold, when you're facing left-handed pitchers, you need to be able to hit left-handed pitching. You just have to.
Okay. There's a question in the chat there, Mr. Black, when you get a chance, just to kind of address it.
Yeah, the rate would encompass all the players. So these ratios encompass all the players. You can finagle it if you want. For example, if you find a way to field 9 Joey Gallos, low BABIP, high power, high I, can't do anything else. He is going to hit more home runs and draw more walks than anyone else. That team is just going to, because that's what their cards say. However, in 2010, that's a really good idea. Homers are easy to hit in 2010. It's easy to take walks in 2010. In other eras, less so. Specifically, let's get into that. Hits are the same. Don't worry about it. Doubles are a little less, but it's still kind of high. So if you have gap power, you'll still hit your share of doubles. Triples are about the same, a little higher. I wouldn't play for triples. Like, I would not look too hard at your runner's speed to try to hit triples, at least not in 1985. Home runs are a little less, and noticeably less. So let's think about this. If there's a runner on first base, but there are less doubles and less homers hit, the value of a runner on first base goes down. He's not able to score on those plays because they're less common, right? So walks are going to go down a little bit in 1985. However, notice the rates. The rates are the same. So in 1985, a player with the same amount of I will probably walk the same amount, if not more, in 2010. We're still bringing I to this tournament simply because it's so easy to get on base with a walk. But we are conceding, we probably shouldn't steal because it's out of the park baseball. We probably shouldn't hit singles because it's hard to run in this era too. We should still hit homers. We should still hit doubles. But we have to understand that we're not going to get as many runs as we did in 2010 just because home runs and doubles are less common. Hit by pitches, it's already low in 2010. It's even lower in 1985. The Craig Biggio-based offense, I wouldn't recommend it. Strikeouts have gone down noticeably from 7 to about 5.3. So there's going to be about 1.5 to 2 extra balls in play hit that your gloves are going to have to take care of. Anti-Ks is at its best as a hitter rating in modern because modern is the highest strikeout rate. Because strikeout rates have gone down, the anti-K rating is just not as important. It still helps. Striking out is bad. Avoiding strikeouts is good. It's not going to help as much as 2010. And finally, you have to notice this in 1985. BABIP percent is significantly lower. It's 281 instead of 297. With the fewer strikeouts, the BABIP volume is higher. There are more balls in play. But those balls are less likely to fall because of the lower BABIP rating of the set. IFK, Sundown, you got it right. If the K rates and home runs are high, BABIP volume is low. There isn't really much else you can look at. There's no other really way you can count that. So effectively, BABIP volume is the opposite of the K rate.
right. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to talk about the lower parts? You want to
Yeah,
go
we'll talk
to
about the lower parts a little bit. Now,
Okay.
this is a little gobbledygook. Most casual players don't need to go this far. When you do the auto calcs, you get a little more information, such as your stolen base ratings, your sacrifice, bunt, and hit ratings, your ground ball ratings, and your outfield assists. These are not on Baseball Reference. You're not going to see them. You can kind of sort of divine them from the calculating process if you're so inclined. The things that I've cared about, you see those big red exclamation points there, are the stolen base attempts and the stolen base percent. This blew my mind when Manfred came out and said, wow, we should make the bases bigger to make more stolen bases. Look at Baseball Reference. The most recent year are some of the highest stolen base attempt rates in history. People are successful at stealing bases more than they ever have been. If Ricky Henderson played in 2023, he'd have even more stolen bases. And Manfred says, we need even more stolen bases. Okay. For our purposes, though, Out of the Park Baseball does not model stolen bases very well. They are going to try, even more so than in 2010, and they are going to get thrown out, even more so than 2010. Don't steal bases. You probably should not do that. Again, you should only do it if you're desperate, as in you're down by one and you don't have a choice, but you can't really do that in a game, so don't worry about it. Also, outfield assists. It turns out outfield assists is just as rare as they are in modern era here, so don't worry about it too much. Other eras, not so much. Dead ball outfield assists are very common, but don't worry about that here. Also, in the calculations, like I said, now we're really going the weeds, so I'm not going to talk too much about this. The errors are significantly higher in 1985. 81 to 60, about 33% higher. For the most part, I almost always ignore error ratings in modern era. They're really unlikely. And if they're a player with a bad error rating goes from really unlikely to slightly less really unlikely. You need luck to win in any tournament. Part of that luck is expressed by the really unlikely things not screwing you. So I typically don't worry about it. But looking at this, there is one thing I've noticed for 1985. First of all, a lot of those errors are from the pitcher. Now, I'm not going to tell you to look too hard at your pitcher error rate. Don't worry about that. But when I was doing my calculations, my center fielder issue, there was a lot of noise, a lot of variance. I'm going to look at outfield error for my center fielder more than I normally do in this tournament. Yes. When Duke's didn't say base running is low, yes. When you do calculations, they give you a number from 30 to 80. 41 is a low number. Going to first to third is important. You just don't do it. Let's think about it. It's really easy to get from first to third on a single when there are two out. He's running on the pitch. He runs on contact. He's going to run as hard as he can immediately. With 0 or 1 out, he has to stop and wait to see if the line drive falls. So he's not going to get to third base as often because he has to stop and wait for it to fall. So your base running, your ability to get from first to third on a single or from second to home on a single is much more based on game situation than it is in the ratings of your cards. Now, if you have cards with good base running, they will do better in the long run. In the short term, anything goes. I've been very angry sometimes when my 69 overall Billy Hamilton, the one with the blue running ratings, gets thrown out at home twice in a game. Sometimes it happens. Is this all specific to Perfect Team? Yes, at least what I'm talking about now. The stolen bases aren't as broken in the base game. I'm not sure. I don't play the base game as much as most other people. I have never seen a successful double steal in Perfect Team from first and third where the guy runs to second and on the throw, the guy on third base steals home. I've never seen it. I would love to do it. I think it's cool. I've never seen it. So I don't think I'm going to succeed by telling my guys to steal bases, especially since the only way I can do that is the slider bar. There's no other way to tell them to steal. There's no real context there. I kind of just give him a general sense and dress him up to send him off to his first day of school and hope he comes back alive. Do I recommend different slider settings due to error models as well? Yes. I assume that is going to be part of the presentation when we build the team. So we'll get to that in a moment.
All right. Well, this is a perfect time. I'm gonna bring up my bronze tournament slot here, and we will start the construction. Just excellent. I see some comments in there. People are soaking this in like a sponge, and such valuable information. And we do need to take a break, though, Mister Black. So go hydrate, and we'll be back in a
Absolutely.
minute and a half to continue.
See you then.
Back in, we have Mr. Black here. Again, longtime member of the community, but first time appearing on an OOTP stream. Again, on this 4th of July. Thank you again, Mr. Black, for being here and helping me create some sort of semblance out of a bronze PTS team. Because again, there's a lot of highly competitive people out there that know a lot about the game. And so to get more people involved in tournaments and cap tournaments, I think this information is going a long, long way. So we ended off looking at when pinch hitters come in. It does say default. I was thinking of that defensive substitution for the ninth, but you were recommending we change this to a specific inning?
Well, my point is that most people don't touch it. So the splittiness of your pitcher really depends on how early he goes into the game. As an aside, I've been playing a lot of those gold do or dies. I have Adam Ottavino and Jose De Leon set as my long men behind a fully lefty pitching staff. Those two pitchers are very splitty righties. Their ERAs are amazing. I think in the last 150 innings, I think they've come in at about $1.75. Now, they only go in if we're losing, so they don't really help the game much. But if you're wondering where you put a splitty pitcher, you send him in as a long man or you send him in early in the game, opposite sided of your starters. That's where he goes.
And you were talking about, having pairs, right? Pairs of pitchers. So for your relievers, you're talking about investing in some points in a pair of relievers.
Correct, yes.
A lefty righty or both lefties, or does it matter?
They don't necessarily need to be, their handedness doesn't really matter in the later innings because unfortunately, the advantage of platoon always lies with the batters. It is always easier to throw in a pinch hitter than it is to throw in a new pitcher. So if you put a pitcher in late in the game, and he's a reliever, that's where he's going to go in, the other manager can always, even if they've never touched their strategy settings, throw in a guy on a different side. If he's splitty, that's a problem. If he's not splitty, you'll be all right, hopefully.
All right, so we do have Alfredo in as one of the two that we've invested in. He's a righty in the bullpen. That puts us at 11 pitchers, so I'm guessing one more investment into
Correct, and I'm going to recommend, I believe he's a 54 overall, Brandon Beachy.
Beachy.
B-E-A-C-H-Y, like an ocean beach.
And
he may be a starter, so select all pitchers instead of reliever.
Okay, that might be. Oops.
B-E-A Bravo Echo Alpha. There you go. He's the second one to listen.
9. A whole 9 points. Woo.
I don't know if you're going to be able to afford this deck by the time we're done, man. This is really breaking your bank here.
I know. 9 perfect points. Woo. Okay. So that, I guess, gives us our at least, for now, unless something good comes out on Thursday in terms of new cards.
Okay. So we're not going to do the sliders yet, but we are going to set our bullpen roles. Set Beachy and Aceves primary role to stopper 8th.
Okay. 8th close or 8th later?
8th close. You do not want to save him if you are down by a run. You do not. Otherwise, you're going to be splitting in a tired starter, and you're not going to be down by 1 run. You're going to be down by 3 runs. Aceves 2. Also, on top of that, we're going to give the secondary role closer.
Okay, so interesting. Why would you? I know there's been debate and talk about that for a secondary role. If you have him as a stopper, why also give him that closer role?
Because the AI manager was designed for the main game. And in the main game, you play entire seasons. It's the long run happens. You have to think about tomorrow. Sometimes you just have to rest your pitchers. And if you got to give up a game, you got to give up a game. Makes sense in the dog days of August. In tournament baseball, you cannot do that. You can't give up a game. So you have to be be ready to what to do. And unfortunately, the AI manager, to think intelligently, needs two things. He needs to be told when to take the current pitcher out, and he needs to be told what pitchers he can use to put in. With closer and stopper, both of these pitchers, the AI manager knows that in a late and close situation, these are the guys I'm going to use. We're still going to make sure he doesn't use them if they're tired. If he doesn't need to use either of them, great. If he only use one, great. If he has to use two, I hope we win the game, but it would really suck if he used both and we still lost. But this way, they will be able to go in and be used intelligently. As a result, if you walk at the end of the tournament, are you familiar with the concept of leverage index, or P or QLI?
All I know in the game is there's high leverage and avoid high leverage.
Right. Using these bullpen settings, we're going to make sure that Aceves and Beachy are going to lead our team in leverage index. We are going to use them in close and late situations. The other option is to use a tired starter. And in the bronze era, there are not a lot of good pitchers with good stamina. So, okay. As for the rest of the guys, the one we care about the most is CJ Natowski. He is going to be a long man, normal usage, mop up.
Yeah, you talked about mop up and the importance of it earlier.
Yeah, it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's so great. I'm also going to recommend Brandon Williamson is long, normal, mop up.
Okay. And Alfredo, was he a stopper? Same thing as Beachy?
Yes, he's the same as Beachy.
Okay.
For the other three relievers, I should have a middle reliever in there somewhere. So let Plunk do it. We're going to go middle relief, avoid high leverage, mop up.
For which one?
Plunk.
Oh, Plunk.
Matter of fact, we're going to say Plunk and Thornton are going to be middle relief, avoid high leverage, mop up. You know what, Colin? I'm going to give you that job too. Long relief, avoid high average, mop up. So a little bit about these roles and stuff. This is how the bullpen works. Go ahead and open up a primary role list so we can see what they all are.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got these right because I think I might have missed. Were these the three that long relief?
Yep, you got them right.
Okay. So sorry, go into where?
So click on primary roles so we can see the list of all the primary roles there are.
Okay, help me out here.
Right next to Alfredo Aceves, where it says stopper. Go ahead and click that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to explain what all these things actually mean and what they actually do. None specified means don't use him unless he's dead, unless literally no one else can be used. I don't want to do this in tournaments because there are going to be some average innings that someone's got to eat. However, it's not a bad idea. It's a good way to hide a pitcher and make sure he doesn't get used. Before the advent of mop-up, you should do it. You should not really do it here. Use long or something like that. Let me make sure I can see the list here. I'm sorry about this.
So emergency.
Because unfortunately, the chat thing on the bottom obscured my view, so I couldn't see it. Oh. Okay. Emergency SP. If your starter does not have a full, like 95% starter fitness, this guy will be used as a starter instead. We're bringing 5 starters. This is never going to be a problem for us. Now, there is a thing where 4 starter relievers are, that's a thing in modern era. People do that. Even then, you still probably shouldn't use an emergency pitcher because the point is to have the starters have less stamina, pull them out earlier. In other words, emergency pitcher is only used if you literally have no one with 100% starting pitching fitness at the beginning of the game. If you have a 5-man rotation, that should never happen. So we don't have to worry about that. Up next is long relief. The long relief man goes in the first through 4th innings. If your starter is taken out for any reason, your AI manager is going to go to your list of long relievers, pick one, and throw him in. Middle relief is just the same, except he goes in the 5th or 6th. Also, though, he's not going to put this in either a long man or a middle reliever in a high leverage situation. These guys are save the stamina pitchers. Remember, that's not necessarily what we want in a tournament situation. Specialist is what it sounds like. You want this pitcher to be pitching against the correct handedness. This isn't very good. Later in the game, you're going to draw pinch hitters. So if you put in the splitty reliever, it's not going to help you. Being a specialist just isn't that great in the later innings. I almost never use the specialist role. Setup. Setup goes in when you tell him to, as early as the 6th, as late as the 8th. This is a high leverage role. Your AI manager knows to use this pitcher if it is close and late and the leverage index is high. Stopper is just like setup. However, we are willing to send them in the middle of an inning. With setup, we're less likely to do that. We want to give them a clean inning. Finally, closer is kind of just like a stopper with even less usage, but you specifically save him for the lead. You do not use the closer when you are tied or when you are losing. I prefer stopper to closer for that reason, because even if I'm down by 1, I still need to use a reliever as opposed to a tired starter. I could still lose the game, even lose the game if I turn a 1-run trail to a 4-run trail. So I have to do something about that.
Okay.
So here's the thing. What we're going to do is, with the slider bars eventually, we are going to tell our AI manager to give our starters long hooks. Then we're going to try to get 7 innings out of them. But once they get to the end, we're going to say use the relievers. We have 2 of them. Specifically, we're going to start by setting their individual settings. So go to either Aceves or Beachy's slider pitch, their personal one. Okay, now there's no time like the present, so I might as well walk you through these slider ratings, right? Why not, right? Hook as a starter.
All the ears perk up because so many people, that's kind of a weak spot is sliders. So great, valuable information for those that want to learn a little bit more about sliders.
Hook as a starter is what it sounds like. How much are you willing to trust him with regarding his stamina and the game situation? If your starter's hook is set to max and he gets blown up for 5 runs in the first 2 innings, he's going to keep him. He's going to let him pitch. If your starter hook is set to low, early in the game, he's going to pull him early if he falls behind. Also, later in the game, he is much more likely to pull him if the situation gets bad. Mostly it's whether or not someone gets to second base. If your starter's at 0 hook and he's pitching, your AI manager will often let him pitch until a runner in scoring position happens. This is a problem, especially in modern era, because here we are. We've got a starter in there at 0 hook. AI manager, I want you to go get him if anything goes wrong. He's going to say, okay, boss, I'll pull him if anyone gets to second base. And he gets up a walk and a home run. Happens all the time. It's preposterous. So this is why I lean on the relievers, because there's so many holes in the AI's thinking that he just doesn't do it right. So I kind of want to just grab the AI by the scruff of the neck. Here's what you're doing, and do it that way. Hook is the reliever, same thing. In this particular situation, we're going to set it to max. As I mentioned earlier, you will lose more reliever stamina if you appear in a game in consecutive days. Your pinch count doesn't need to be high. You will be super tired if you pitch after 2 consecutive games. Since we want to use both Aceves and Beachy in the 7th or 8th, in the 8th or 9th, we're hopefully trying to get them to finish the game. So once they go in, we're married, and we're going to go and we're going to ride or die with that pitcher, at least until he hits his pitch count. We'll get to that in a moment. Pitch around an intentional walk. These are slightly helpful. There is a little bit of AI management where it will look at the batter that is on deck. If the batter that is on deck is a significantly worse hitter than the current batter, the pinch around will let him to just throw him chase 4 curveballs. Did you swing? No, take a base. If you're even more aggressive as intentional walk, because this way you don't have to throw the pitch count. However, though, this isn't really that helpful. Have you ever seen someone have their best hitter at 3rd and a garbage man at 4th? So it is a thing. It's not useless. I just don't see the point in it. I don't really touch it all that much.
Even if you have a guy with high control, because that's kind of what I've been doing. If I have a guy with high control, I'll move up the pitch around.
I would even argue that that's detrimental because with his higher control, he is less likely to give up blocks. That's what control does. From what I've seen, I haven't tested it very well. I mean, I could definitely do it better, but there's so many. I play this game too much. I'm sorry. It is much more of an issue about the next batter that drives the decision to pitch around or intentional walking.
Oh, okay.
How do you force that change as part of pulling a starter with a walk late and get those relievers in? I'll get to that in a moment. Hold runner. It's what it sounds like. How often you want to throw to first base? Stealing bases is not that big of a deal in OOTP, so I don't worry about all that much. On top of that, I don't want you throwing out your arm any more than you need to. I'm already going to be abusing your arm a lot in this game, so I don't want you to waste any more. So I don't touch it, although you can probably stand to set it low. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Infield in. I used to watch a lot of these games, and I got so mad every time this would happen. With a runner on first and a runner on third, with one out, they'd play infield in. I don't want infield in. I want double play death. After playing around with it a while, setting infield in at -2 seemed to solve this problem. So when I had runners at the corners with less than two out, they would not play infield in. They'd play at normal depth. I have never thought about it since.
So -2 or 2 to the left?
2 notches to the left, yes. Guard lines. If you know Trevor Plouffe, he's on the John Boy shows a lot. He was a third baseman for the Twins for a while.
Right.
He was once asked, what advice would you give yourself now that your career is over? I was very surprised when he said, I should have stood closer to the line. As a corner infielder, both as a first and third baseman, the hits that you have a chance on are hits towards the foul line. If you miss it, it's a double. Or hits towards the middle. If you miss it, it's a single. It is much more important to prevent doubles than it is to prevent singles. So if you raise guard lines to high, you will give up a few points in batting average. You will give up a few more singles. You will prevent those, you will hopefully prevent those line drive doubles down the line. So I typically set it to max. Infield shifts. I set it high because I like shifts. Shifts are good. There's no way for me to test it or really look at it to see whether it's good or not. There's no way I can really tell. So I set it high because I like shifting. Outfield shift, same thing. I'm not as aggressive with it, but I just set it high. Outfield depth, also the same thing. There's no way to test it. There's no way to record results or to see how good it is or anything like that. Aggressive tiredness hook. Well, here's a quick and dirty stamina primer on how pitcher fitness works. Stamina will allow you to throw a few more pitches. However, more importantly is that your deeper pitches are less bad. For example, a reliever with 12 stamina is going to have a bad 20th pitch. A reliever with 100 stamina is going to have a much better 20th pitch. However, their fitness levels will still go down by similar amounts. The stamina for relievers, at least, is much more about in-game getting more quality out of it as opposed to being able to pitch more for longer. Now, in-game, your stamina has 3 settings, or 3 levels, if you will. He's fine, he's tired, or he's dead. The higher your stamina is, the longer it will take for you to get to tired and dead. There isn't that much of a difference between tired and fine, though. I mean, it hurts, it's bad, but it's not that big of a deal. If you click aggressive tiredness hook, he's going to pull him when he hits tired. Okay, but that's not necessarily what we want for the situation because we want to use our relievers for 2 innings. So we're not going to click it this time. And finally, if your pitcher gets to dead, you've seen those games where, like, after a long series, out of nowhere, they give up 23 runs. That's because the pitchers were all dead. You might as well be a gym unknown at that point. Finally, is the most important piece of advice setting we're going to set for Alfred and Beachy. Pitch count 25, pitch count 30, RP bench 70. We're going to set the pitch count to 30 and not 20. Sorry. In modern era, every reliever can go 25 pitches, no problem. Give him one rest day. He'll be fine. He can go for almost forever. Maybe you'll have an issue in the 21st or 22nd straight game, but for the most part, he'll be fine.
Now, because
However,
this is 1985, is this
so
boosted
we're
up?
jacking it up to 30 because it's 1985.
Okay.
That's the reason why.
And there was a question about, the ones we set for Alfredo here. These are these would be global settings, correct?
Yes. We went through for global settings. Now, you can see there's the just a team settings there. So we're probably going to do this with our main team and not worry about Alfredo's individual settings. You might want to set all of them to middle for Alfredo.
Okay.
But you absolutely have to set those pitch counts and RPA limits with the way we're using our relievers.
So we want relievers. We don't want relievers all max, do we? Just Alfredo?
Yes. Well, let me think. No, we're going to let's set Alfredo and Brandon's reliever sliders to high. Everyone else can be left as is.
Okay. So want to keep that in the middle then.
Yeah. We'll get the team sliders in a moment.
Okay.
So let's go back at Alfredo and Brandon. Let's make sure they've got the right length. Set all those sliders to middle, and 30-0-0-70 is correct. I understand about the starter thing. We're going to have to do something wacky with our main sliders. It's going to be a while, but we'll get them.
But keep the reliever maxed.
Yes. So specifically, when we put him in, we're doing two things. You're going to go all the way. We're going to get your full 30 pitches out of you. This is also important to make sure we don't have to use the other reliever in the same game. As long as we use one reliever on, one reliever off, we can go forever. If we have to end up using two in a game, that's going to hurt us. So we're going to try to avoid that with the long hook and the long count. Unfortunately, sometimes the game situation just doesn't help. If our bats just aren't going to win the game for us, sometimes we're going to get screwed. On the other hand, we have a lot of mop-up relievers. When you have a mop-up pitcher, he is going to go in a low-leverage game, and the manager says, all right, Sonny, it's your game. Even with CJ Natowski's 14 stamina, he's going to give you 3 innings. And that's so great for saving your relievers because you don't have to use them. So, like I said earlier, if you're not using the mop-up, you should take your worst relievers and give them the mop-up role. It saves your relievers so much work.
Okay.
So make sure you also set the same settings to Beachy as well as Aceves.
Yep, I believe that's what he has here. He's got.
Okay, so we have an interesting situation that's coming up. The way I like to say it is that our Legos are the wrong size. We're going to do the main strategy settings. Mainly, we're going to answer that question of how to get our starters out of the game. Go to the global strategy settings for me. Let's go ahead and set the main strategies for all times and outscores as we said. So stealing bases, no. Conservative base running. Use hit and run, no. Although
when you say no, are you going all the way down or just leave it at middle?
Yeah, all the way down. Stealing bases is what you said. How often do you steal bases? Stealing bases sucks in an OOTP perfect team. You should almost never do it. You should only really do it with a guy who has a great stealing deficit, where their stealing is several points above their speed, and set it individually. Do not do this team wide. People all think that they're better base stealers than they are. No. Base running, I'm setting this conservative for 2 reasons. 1, base running is low in this era. 2, we're playing for doubles and home runs. We don't want to get thrown off on the base paths. We're going to score with the next guy's bat if we didn't score with our own home run ourselves. So we're going to set it to low, maybe 1 point above minimum. Use hit and run. Now, there is a time for hit and run. Yeah, this isn't it. It will take your batter who is good at BABIP and anti-Ks, and he'll swing at the ball. You are much more likely to get from first to third on a single if you get a single. But you ordered him to swing, so he's never going to walk. If your batter has any eye at all, he can't hit and run. We're going to be taking eye for most of our batters, so we're not going to hit and run for the most part. We're going to set it down to near minimum. Sacrifice bunt, same thing. Well, kind of. Let me ask you this. When would you sacrifice bunt in the game?
If I'm maybe behind by a run or 2 later in the game.
Okay. For me, I would like to sacrifice bunt if and only if it is late and it is tied. If I'm up by 1, What do I need to sacrifice bunt for? I'm not giving an out away for free. If I'm down by 1, the out is too precious. I don't want to spend it on a bunt. I want to try to produce something with it. However, look at the score drop down where it says all scores. You don't get to pick a tied game. You get to pick a close game. So even though I said there is a situation I would like to bunt in, if I use the close setting, I'll be in a plus or minus 1 run, and I don't want to bunt it. So I don't bunt at all for that reason. But this is a problem. This is going to come up later, in that the controls are just not as good as you would like them to be. Squeeze bunt play. You're gonna call a squeeze? Can your guys bunt? I doubt it. Even then, if you don't have the speed. Bunt for hit. Bunt for hit is really good in Modern Era for a different reason. Everybody punts on third base defense. You're not going to send him in on the corners. He's not going to run. Gold Chipper is not going to be able to get to a low ball. So if you have bunt for hit, a batter with a high bunt for hit rating is going to steal some infield singles more than you like. So I might as well leave that where it is. Home teams, extra innings, runner on second, no outs. That's the only time for me. Yeah, there you go. However, you can't even set extra innings. You have to only play the last inning here. You can't make the distinction whether you're home or away. You can't make that option here. So because the strategy settings just aren't perfect, you kind of have to work around it. We're still in all times and all scores, right? Okay. We've walked out through the other ones, so we're going to set them like we said. We're going to go pinch around a little bit lower, intentional walk a little bit lower. Hold runners minimum. If you run into a base stealing steam, well, I'm sorry, man. I don't know what I had to do about that. Infield in, -2. Corners in, never touched it. I don't really think it's important. Lines, infield, outfield shifts, and depth high. Okay. Now, put your diving helmets on. We're going to go deep. You see the timing on the score on the top there? We're going to set different orders for late and last. Let's make sure we get the last set of substitution strategy for all scores first. So lefty righty pitching and lefty righty batting matchups. You have to think about this and how much you actually intend to switch your pitchers. Now with this team, we've got 2 lefty long men that we're only going to use if anything went wrong. Everyone else is a righty. So why are we worrying about pitching matchups? Set it down. If you are using 2 pitchers where they're both available and you want to do that, you can do that. So you could use pitching matchups in that situation. But then again, late in the game, you will draw the pinch hitter. So it's not that good. Lefty-righty batting matchups, you got to ask the same question for your bats. If you have platoon bats, you can probably set it higher or maybe a little bit above than normal. If you don't have platoon bats, you need to set it low. Otherwise, your very good lefty hitter faces a lefty pitcher, and your AI manager is going to say, oh, I should pinch hit and send in a righty 40. No, don't do that. So this is very much a sliding scale. How many platoon bats do you have? In gold DOD, I bring 15 batters. I am platooned at 7 of 9 positions. I set it high. I pinch hit in the 3rd. In a cap tournament, I don't have platoon bats. I don't pitch hit at all. I can't.
Did you say you pitch hit in the 3rd in your gold?
Yes.
Oh,
you can't pitch hit in the 1st to beat the opener, but yeah, 3rd inning, absolutely.
Wow.
I brought the bats. Why not? What's he going to do? Enjoy the bench?
So we're keeping all these in the middle then for this bronze?
We're going to adjust our batting matchups after we're done. We're going to lower pitching matchups to -3.
-3. Okay.
So we'll worry about pinch hitters for position players later. Pinch hit for pitchers. This is a great sliding bar in a no DH tournament. If you want to put in a pinch hitter and try to make us out of a situation, you can. However, if you set that bar high, your manager will try to do this in the 2nd inning. Sometimes it works. It usually doesn't. So you should probably leave it medium, but it's really more of a no DH slider bar than anything else.
Right.
Use pinch runners. It's just what it sounds like. If it's close and late, you're most likely to put him in. Although, do you have a pinch runner? Probably not. So I wouldn't touch it. It's not that big of a deal for me. I don't think a pinch runner is that important. Even those situations where I bought a pinch runner, he didn't really do much for me. So I haven't touched it. I won't worry about it. If you want to go on the left, we'll cover that too real quick. The starting pitcher's match pitch count is what it sounds like. Same for relievers. The only problem, though, is that it applies it to everybody. You may not want it applied to everybody, so you might want to do it individually. That's up to you. Okay. Defensive substitutions. As a baseball man, what's your defensive substitution policy? When do you want to put them in?
Yeah, I usually come in 7th or 8th, probably, with the lead.
I'm so sabermetrically inclined here that I hate defensive substitutions. Get this nonsense off my team. And the reason why is if I have a lead, they probably have the defense to get it done. My defense isn't that terrible, I hope. If they give the lead up and the game becomes tied, I need them in the lineup to try to win the game for me. If I tick them out of the game, I'm dead. So I don't defensive substitution. This is just my opinion. I can't prove that I'm right. I'm not even sure that I am right. But I go 9th inning leading by 5 or more.
Oh, wow. Okay, leading by 5. Okay.
Position player pinch hit starting in. This is another question on how many pinch hitters you have. So we'll come back to this once we've put the bats in. And the default SP bench, you don't need to touch that. Default RP bench, some people set it high at 80%. Some people set it lower. I typically am aggressive and let it lower to 70. For the most part, it doesn't matter anywhere near as much as the game situation or their roles. Even if you told a pitcher to be benched at 70%, he's at 69, but the game needs him, the AI will typically put him in anyway.
Okay. All right. So now that we've got the kind of the global overall strategies here, is this specific to 1985, or would you use something very, very similar in modern?
Let me just see here. Stealing base is same. Base running, I'd set it I'd go by player for base running. But for the most part, I still want to not take risks. I'm only letting you run if you're fast. It sucks getting thrown out at home. It really does. Hit and run. If you're playing Andres Galarraga, you have a character with no eye. You can have him hit and run. Don't do it for the whole team because it kills your walks. Sack bunt, explain, squeeze bunt, play. Bunt for hit, set that individually. If you got a guy who has a blue bunt for hit, set it to max. It's free real estate. Pitch around, send around, same thing. Hold runners, same thing. Stealing is just not good enough in OOTP to worry about it. The infield in I explained, and I think all the other stuff is the same. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to switch timing to 9th.
To late?
Last, 9th.
Last. Okay, last. 9th inning or later.
Okay. If the starter is in the game after the 9th inning, this must be going very well. I'm willing to leave him in if he has a large lead. So scored a large lead. And we have the hook at max. Okay. In every other situation in the 9th inning, from small lead on down, I want them out of there. We brought relievers. That's what they're there for. So for the other 4 settings, other than large lead, set the hard starting pitcher hook to -5.
So leave it for large lead.
Correct.
All the other ones.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this is very boring. You kind of got to do it all one at a time.
Did you say set it all the way to the left?
Absolutely. We do not want him in the game at that point. Okay. If he's in the 9th inning, even in 1985, he's got to be on 120 pitches.
Well, that makes sense. And a lot of this is just thinking logically, right? Thinking common sense in a real game situation.
Right. The only downside is it's a lot of work. You do have to think about every slider and how you want to do it. Fortunately, though, you get to save these presets for the most part. I have a lot of presets for most of my stuff, so I can even share those if I were so inclined. The only downside is that there's some assembly required. How many pinch hitters do I have? Because that's where I got to set the slider. But here's it. So you set them all, other than large lead, starter hook nil. Great. Okay. Now we're going to set timing to late.
Okay, timing to late.
Okay. If their starter is still in the 7th, that's good. He can probably still pitch. However, we have relievers. If it goes bad, I want him out of there. So for large lead, leave him in. Small lead, I'm going to set it to -3. Tied, -3. I'm going to go -3 down the line for late for my starting pitcher hook. Now, I do have to mention this again. Our Legos are not the right size. We want to get 2 innings out of our 30 pitch relievers. We do not get to change our strategy between the 7th and 8th inning. We have to use the same strategy for the 7th and the 8th. It's annoying, but we're just going to have to live with it.
Okay, so late, we've got all the settings -3 except for the large lead.
And we have one more thing to do. We're going to go to early. All right. In a general baseball sense, you got your starter in there. You think he's a good starter. Boom. He's down 4 runs in the 2nd inning. Do you go get him?
Yep.
I remember having this conversation with Kidneys once about the gold DODs. Specifically, I was running very few pitchers, and I only have to play 6 games. Hopefully, the pitchers will all be dead for Game 7, but they finish Game 6. And this situation comes up. If your pitcher's dying, do you go in? Kidneys told me that I should not pull him because even though he's losing, he's still just as good as he was in the 1st inning, and he's still able to pitch. He's not going to hit tired or dead yet. And that's true. He's still going to pitch just as well. But my confidence is this. If my pitcher's getting lit up, A, he's just unlucky, or B, he's facing a heavily platooned team that has decided to kill him. So if my starting pitcher is getting lit up early, I want to go get him with a long reliever of an opposite-handedness. So early, large trail, -5.
Wow, for the hook.
Correct. Okay. In our situation, we're going to send in CJ Nikowski after our righties. He's going to be much better than you think because if our righties got killed, there's probably a lot of lefties in there he can tee off on. As I mentioned earlier, Jose De Leon and Adam Ottavino in my golds. They're righties that came in after lefties. Great ERA. They only get used in this role, though, so they don't really do much for it. Yeah. What do we do for reliever hook in late situations? We are letting the pitch count be the reliever hook. As Kidneys told me, your pitcher's going to be pitched just the same as well throughout the most part. Eventually, they will die. We're stopping them at 30 to make sure that they don't die. This is also enough to make sure they can recover after 1 day of rest. They could still go. And the game situation says they might. Sometimes they do. But we're going to attempt to ride to either both Beachy and Aceves can finish the game for us when we put them into the game.
Okay, so there's our global settings, and you said we're not touching the starting pitch count because that sets them for all of them. We would do that individually if we want. Correct. And do you recommend that for the starters in this type of tournament that you set pitch counts?
The issue is it's so hard to measure. Like, what's the difference between a 70 stamina and 80 stamina pitcher in terms of pitch counts? Yeah. I don't know how to measure that. I don't know how to test that. I'm not sure. I don't know where that is. Whereas with the relievers, I watched a tournament every game, every 10 minutes. I wrote down how many pitches were thrown, innings thrown, and the total stamina movements. 6 hours later, I had a pretty good set of data. After that, I stared at it for 10 minutes, and I figured out that in modern era, 25 pitches is enough for a reliever to get it all back, enough of it back for the next day. I'm not the next day, after 1 day of rest. Sorry.
So I think we're done, I think, with the pitchers, right? We got the lineup. We got everyone in their right roles. Again, as you said, we're going with 7, basically. We're investing in the 5 starters, 2 really strong relievers that you want in high leverage kind of situations. And then for the strategy, we pinpointed some of the starting pitching sliders, maxing up the shifts, guard lines. And then we're going to touch these a little bit later when we get to the batters.
Correct. Now, here's the good news. Since we didn't spend too much on our pitchers, we're going to have some money for bats. Let's go buy some bats.
All right, batters. Batter up. All right, so we're looking for 14 batters, and you said we want to spend on the top 9, and then we want to spend some on the platoon
Correct.
guys do.
So
So we started off talking about real life baseball, the importance of the positions, whether you want to focus on the hitting, on the defense, catcher being the most important for defense in real life baseball.
correct.
Then we looked at the modern era, 2010, which OOTP uses the ability to play defense compared to the ability to hit, catcher, all the way up to DH. You talked about the different important ratings that you want to look for in these players in a 2010 environment. And then, more importantly, I think, is different eras, modern 1985 versus dead ball, and how the catcher, especially, changes importance in terms of buying a bat or cheaping out for a glove.
Correct. In dead ball, when nobody strikes out, the catcher's a first baseman. He's even less important than your first baseman. I genuinely consider first baseman defense to be more important in dead ball than catcher defense.
All right. And do you have a favorite tournament that you like to play in?
Unfortunately, it would be dead ball, but the dead ball these days is the late silver that you have to sign up the day before, though, and even then, it is a best of 3. Ugh, that's awful. However, I am playing a lot since I'm doing this bullpen stuff. I'm playing a lot lower than modern stuff. I like OOTP era. I don't want to toot my own horn, but toot. I've won it 5 times in the last 3 weeks. I do not own many of the big cards. I am using Shohei Ohtani, the live one, but other than that, you don't need great pitchers like you would in League. Because remember, in League, everything is normalized. You want the best card, and the second best card is the first loser. Whereas in tournaments, it's against the environment. It's okay to be 99 instead of 100. It's not as good, but it's not as crippling as it is in League.
And what's the choice for the Windsor? Was that a high diamond or a perfect card?
For what?
For the tournaments that you've won.
It's in that tournament OOTP era. It's a diamond card, so you get 3 diamond packs for that.
Okay.
I would like it to be a choice card. I really want that the shortstop Bancroft and the pitcher Pollitt. I'm playing weekly. I'll get there eventually.
Well, I think that has changed a little bit with those cards coming out today. I think you want a Giambi, and I think you want the Tudor.
Yeah, Tudor. Oh man, I'm not a big League player. I'm sorry. I'm free to play, so I'm a tournaments guy.
Yeah. So a lot of packs. I mean, from tournaments and things like that. And this is the card that I think a lot of people are hoping to get in the very near future. Boy, can you see this being a end of cycle card?
Because PBABIP is still new. I mean, we've already seen Tom Niedenfuhr with 120 PBABIP. I wouldn't put it past them to put a 120 PBABIP on a card later down the line. However, that is a very blue card. Yeah. I hope you pull one. I don't know how much I would pay for it because I'm not a League player, and even then, I don't really play the open caps all that much. But it's still pretty good. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, hey, Mr. Black, you are welcome to come on anytime if you have anything else to share. Again, you're part of a great community that either analyzes cards or models cards. 39 Cobra, Vulcan 21, Charles. We've got Kidneys. We've got Exto 4S. We've got Aster, as you mentioned. Izadafel. So many of these people in our community have so much to give and so much advice to pass out. And it's tough sometimes because you don't want to give everything away when you're still competitive. Like you said, you have all these sliders saved and different saves, but you're still giving enough to the community to at least get them in the right direction.
That's true. But then again, I'm a free-to-play player. I used to be a poker player. When you played poker, you never, ever, 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 ever taught another player how to play. If someone else did something dumb, you kept it to yourself because we're playing for money. But some people who play at the Perfect League do play for money. They put some lot of funds into this. Yeah. I don't. So it's not really a big deal if I tell someone something that could be used against me. It's no big deal. I'm just a baseball guy. Although I will point out this, of all the good big Steam and modeler names you mentioned, I have the best facial hair out of all of them combined.
Well, we got to go to a close up there. There we go. There is and how long does that take for something like that to grow?
Beard grows probably about 2 months, and then you shave in the middle. We're rocking the Ambrose T. Burnside this time. He's not the best my favorite Union general, but he was on the right side.
Oh, I see you coming out of the bullpen to the Wild thing. Although you would probably have,
Definitely, yeah,
stuck in the middle
the
coming out.
old Rod Beck. Now, to be fair, I would never be a Red Sox, but that's exactly who I would look like. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Well, just before you go, just because we talked about these cards, let's take a look on the card shop for John Tudor. Just see what he's going for, if he's even there.
I'm expecting a 0 last 10.
Yeah, I don't.
Because if there's a last 10, it means that whoever pulled him was like a lucky free-to-play player who doesn't play perfectly.
Oh, I guess I have to put 100. No wonder he wasn't showing up. Okay, he's 100 card. There's got to be at least one sale already. Tudor. Oops, not Titter. Tudor.
TUD, Tango Uniform Delta.
Geez, it's been, when you get look at that. Look at that. I can't spell them. It's been too long of a stream already. I'm getting into Charles territory.
426.69.
There you go. No past sales. None have been sold yet.
So there's 5 punters. The first guy bid 350K. The second guy's serious and bet 400K. The next 3 guys are all chiseling the rest of them. So none of them really want to take the plunge and put up a bigger bid yet. But 5 buyers already. I hope you pull one. I hope you do.
And Jason Giambi, just so we get an idea on him, none have been sold. 1 serious buyer on him.
Let me see his ratings real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good, but if you have Jimmy Fox, like I can't show as a big outlay. Like Chris Davis is probably a better hitter. If you have Diamond Gehrig, it's no contest.
Yeah, Jimmy Fox. Look at that.
Yeah.
So maybe not $100,000 card, although I think he is slightly higher than Fox. 133 and 122, and Fox was 130 and 106. So yeah, he is.
The only difference is that there's no sell orders. I'd love to hear the reason why someone's selling a Jimmy Fox without a better low diamond first baseman at this point. Is it someone quitting the game?
Yeah. And Eric Davis, you talked about. Where is he?
Chris Davis. Yeah.
Oh, Chris Davis. Yeah.
The 94. That's him. He's right underneath.
Yeah.
He's not Diamond Gehrig versus righties, but he's close.
Yeah. And tomorrow,
third base, and you can hide him there if you want.
Yeah. So you got some lineups to build over the next couple days. We've got the Future Legends 2 series, and a lot of those have been banger cards, really good cards. We'll probably get some more good ones, and that may even change some of these lineups going into Saturday. So maybe it's not worth spending all the time building them yet because you don't know what's going to come out on Thursday.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Black. Like I said, feel free to reach out if you have other things to share. Been a valuable information, seeing everything in the chat here. High Speed Hermes thinks this was great. Boiled egg, this was awesome. My pen is out of ink.
Oh, that's how you know you did well. You ruined the note taker.
There's the compliment. The pen is out of ink. Wrote so much. Cobra is going to use some of these things, test some of these things out. He'll even test his beard up against yours. And yeah, the Giambi usable on Saturday. The Hoosman saying Davis is splitty, but he goes towards the Mathis mission.
That's so one of the reasons why I sprung the 4 and bought him, because Mathis is really, really good.
I think we've heard that once or twice. Okay, really thanks, Mr. Black. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and all the best in your tournaments.
You too. Best of luck. Let's hope those relievers win some games for you.